The sun hung low over Washington, D.C. as Marcus DeShawn sat in a windowless conference room on the 4th floor of the FBI headquarters. Around the table were 7 federal agents, 2 CIA operatives, and a representative from Interpol. On the screen behind them was a single photograph. Viktor Volkov, 63 years old, Russian-Belarusian descent. A man whose official biography listed him as an international businessman with interests in technology, energy and pharmaceuticals. A man whose actual resume included drug trafficking, arms dealing, human trafficking, and suspected terrorism financing. For the past 6 years, Special Agent Rebecca Chen said, tapping the screen, Viktor Volkov has been flooding the United States and Europe with a synthetic opioid called Nexus. We estimate that over 18,000 deaths can be directly traced to his product. He operates from Paris, using the European financial markets as a front. We believe he's also financing 3 separate terrorist organizations across the Middle East and Central Asia. Marcus leaned back in his chair, studying Volkov's face. Sharp features, cold eyes. The kind of man who smiled for photographs but whose laughter never reached those dead eyes. Marcus had spent 15 years hunting men like this, predators who understood that weakness was currency and that violence was simply business. Why now? Marcus asked. Volkov's been active for 6 years. Why accelerate operations? Intelligence suggests he's planning something bigger, said James Morrison from the CIA, spreading documents across the table. We've intercepted communications, vague, heavily encrypted, that mention something called Project Genesis. We don't know what it is yet, but chatter suggests it's imminent. We estimate 2 to 3 months before execution. Chen stood and pulled up a new file. That's where you come in, Marcus. We need someone inside Volkov's inner circle. Someone he'll trust with financial operations. Someone who can get close enough to understand what Project Genesis actually is. Marcus had gone undercover 17 times in his career. He'd infiltrated drug cartels in Colombia, organized crime families in New York, and terrorist cells in Southeast Asia. He was the best because he understood one fundamental truth. The lie had to be perfect. Nicola Levine had been carefully constructed over 18 months. A paper trail, a reputation, a digital footprint. A man born into money but hungry for more. A man with just the right connections, just the right credentials, and just the right amount of ambition to attract someone like Volkov. When do I deploy? Marcus asked. You're already booked on a flight to Paris tomorrow, Chen replied. You'll have a safe house in the Marais district and a cover apartment in the 16th. Your handler will be me. We'll establish dead drops throughout the city. No phone calls, no emails. Everything encrypted through the dead drops. Marcus nodded. This was the part he lived for. The moment when Marcus DeShawn disappeared and became someone else entirely. The moment when danger became his natural habitat. The first 3 weeks in Paris were about establishing credibility. Nicolas Levine frequented the right clubs, wore the right clothes, and cultivated relationships with the right people. He was introduced to minor players in Volkov's operation, money launderers, corrupt officials, low-level traffickers. Each introduction elevated his profile incrementally, carefully, like ascending stairs in the dark. Marcus had rented a luxury apartment overlooking the Seine. The place cost €50,000 per month, money that came from a federal fund designed to establish covers. He filled it with art that suggested refined taste, but not obsessive wealth. He drove a Mercedes-Benz, not a Ferrari. He wore Rolex watches, but not diamonds. Every detail was calculated to present the image of a man successful enough to matter, but not so successful as to draw investigation. The dead drops were positioned throughout Paris. A cafe in the Latin Quarter, where Chen would leave messages inside hollowed-out books. A park bench near the Eiffel Tower, where Marcus would deposit recordings on a USB drive disguised as a key. A bathroom stall in a luxury hotel where information was exchanged in newspaper compartments. Spycraft that seemed anachronistic in an age of digital surveillance, but remained effective because it left no electronic trace. On his 22nd day in Paris, Marcus received a message through the dead drop. Volkov wants to meet you. Friday, 10 p.m., Club Seraphine in Pigalle. Come alone. Seraphine was exactly the kind of place Volkov would choose. Exclusive, discreet, designed for men who conducted business in the shadows. Marcus arrived early, surveying the space. 2 exits. Security cameras at strategic intervals. Backup exits through the kitchen. He identified the weak points, the kill zones, the angles of approach. Viktor Volkov arrived at precisely 10 p.m. He was smaller than Marcus expected, perhaps 5'9", with silver hair combed back from his face. He wore an Armani suit and moved with the economical grace of a predator. With him were 2 men, bodyguards, their bulk barely contained in ill-fitting jackets. Nicolas Levine, Volkov said, extending a hand. His accent was Russian with French undertones. His grip was firm, testing. I've heard interesting things about you. The pleasure is mine, Marcus replied, matching Volkov's intensity while remaining carefully deferential. Your reputation precedes you. Volkov smiled, but the expression was predatory. My reputation is carefully constructed fiction, designed to insulate me from the realities of my business, just as yours is, I suspect. The words landed like a punch. Had Volkov seen through Marcus's cover already? Was this a setup? I'm not sure I understand, Marcus said carefully. No one with your credentials simply appears in European financial markets, Volkov continued. A man with your connections, your resources, your apparent ambition. Such a man doesn't materialize without purpose. Volkov gestured to a private booth. Sit, drink, tell me the truth, and perhaps we can build something profitable together. They talked for 3 hours. Marcus told a version of the truth, a man with federal connections who wanted to cash in those connections for personal profit. A man tired of working for bureaucrats, ready to work for himself. The story was credible because it was grounded in an actual human desire that Volkov would recognize and respect. Greed and ambition. I have a project that requires discretion, Volkov said finally. Financial discretion, logistical discretion. A man who understands that questions are dangerous and silence is golden. I understand discretion, Marcus replied. I also understand profit margins. Volkov nodded, seemingly satisfied. I'll be in touch. Over the next 2 months, Marcus became indispensable to Volkov's operation. He managed money flows through shell companies in Luxembourg, Switzerland, and the Cayman Islands. He coordinated logistics for shipments that never appeared on official manifests. He solved problems that other men couldn't solve. And gradually, carefully, he gained Volkov's trust. During this time, he reported everything to Chen through dead drops. Financial records, names, locations, dates. The FBI was building a case that would eventually allow them to move against Volkov. But there was still the matter of Project Genesis, the mysterious initiative that seemed to be the ultimate objective of all this infrastructure. Then Volkov introduced Marcus to his daughter. Her name was Sophia, and she was nothing like Marcus had expected. According to the files, she was 28 years old, educated in Switzerland and London, known to move in high society circles. The photographs showed an attractive woman in evening gowns, photographed at charity galas and exclusive events. In person, she was far more striking. Dark hair that fell in waves past her shoulders, green eyes that seemed to see through masks and pretense, a presence that commanded attention without demanding it. They were introduced at a private dinner in Volkov's penthouse overlooking Paris. 24 people, all deeply involved in various aspects of his operation. Sophia appeared briefly, impeccably dressed in an emerald gown, and was introduced to Marcus by her father. Nicholas, this is my daughter Sophia. Sophia, this is a new colleague, a man with uncommon talents and reliable discretion. Sophia shook Marcus's hand, and in that brief contact, something shifted. Her eyes locked onto his for just a fraction too long. There was a question in that gaze, an assessment, a recognition that perhaps they were both playing roles. Lovely to meet you, she said. I'm sure you'll find working with my father both profitable and educational. She left almost immediately after the introduction, But Marcus found himself tracking her movements through the party. She didn't participate in the business discussions. She didn't seem interested in the network of criminals gathered in her father's home. Instead, she stood at the windows overlooking the city, alone with a glass of champagne, seeming as isolated as a prisoner in a palace. Over the next 3 weeks, they kept encountering each other, at restaurants, at galleries, at private clubs. It seemed coincidental, but Marcus had learned long ago that coincidence was often just carefully orchestrated inevitability. He began to suspect that Sophia was engineering these meetings. Finally, at an art gallery opening in the Marais, she approached him directly. "Nicholas," she said, appearing beside him as he studied a Rothko painting. "I wanted to apologize for my father. He's a charismatic man, but he's not kind. I wanted to check on you, see if you were managing okay in his world." Marcus studied her face, trying to read the subtext beneath her words. Was this a test? An attempt to compromise his cover? Or genuine concern? "I'm managing," he replied carefully. "Your father seems like a reasonable man to work for." "My father is many things," Sophia said. "But reasonable isn't one of them. He's brilliant and ruthless and utterly convinced that the world deserves what he's giving it." They left the gallery and walked through the streets of Paris. Sophia was relaxed, genuinely present in a way that seemed at odds with her position as the daughter of a crime lord. She told him about her education in Switzerland, about dreams she'd had before her life became what it was. She talked about books and art and philosophy. She asked him questions about his past. Marcus answered carefully, maintaining Nicholas Levine's backstory while revealing enough emotional truth to be believable. It was a delicate dance, compartmentalizing his lie just enough that the truth underneath could shine through. They ended up at an all-night cafe in the Latin Quarter, drinking coffee as the city transitioned from night to dawn. Sophia was quiet for a long moment, watching the sky change color. "I think you're not who you pretend to be," she said finally. "And I think I'm not who I pretend to be either. I think maybe we're the only two honest people in my father's entire world." Marcus felt something inside him crack. This was the moment where he should report the conversation to Chen. This was the moment where he should distance himself from Sophia and maintain the integrity of his cover. Instead, he reached across the table and took her hand. "Who are you?" he asked. "Someone trapped," she replied. "And who are you?" "Someone hunting," Marcus said. Over the next month, Marcus and Sophia became lovers. They met in secret, in the apartment Marcus had rented as part of his cover. They made love with the intensity of people who recognized in each other an escape from their respective prisons. Sophia was different when she wasn't performing. Vulnerable, intelligent, capable of tenderness that seemed impossible given her upbringing. She told him stories about her childhood, about her mother, a woman of stunning beauty who'd loved Volkov until it destroyed her. About being raised in compounds guarded by armed men. About learning at a young age that weakness was dangerous and trust was a luxury no one in her world could afford. "I tried to leave once," she told him one night, lying beside him in the dark. "When I was 22, there was a man, a musician who didn't know who my father was. He wanted to marry me. He wanted to take me to Lyon and build a life together. My father had him killed." Marcus felt rage flood through him. He was a monster. "He was my father," Sophia replied, "and I loved him and hated him in equal measure. That's the real prison, knowing the person you love is capable of infinite cruelty." Marcus should have been gathering intelligence about Sophia's knowledge of her father's operations. Instead, he found himself falling in love with her. It was a violation of every protocol, a compromise of his mission, and an inevitable consequence of two broken people finding solace in each other. The revelation came when Sophia produced a photograph. It was Marcus, taken months ago at the FBI headquarters in Washington. In the photograph, he was walking with Special Agent Chen. "I had you investigated," Sophia said calmly. "I hired private investigators in Washington. I had them follow your cover back to its source. Nicholas Levine doesn't exist, but Marcus Deshawn very much does. Marcus moved toward his weapon, but Sophia was already holding a small pistol, trained on him with professional precision. She'd learned this in her father's world. How to move quickly, how to handle weapons, how to take control of a situation. "I'm not going to shoot you," she said quietly, "but I needed to know. I needed to understand whether you were playing me or whether what we have is real." "I was sent here to bring your father down," Marcus said, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting inside him. "I'm FBI." "I know," Sophia replied. She lowered the gun. "And I'm going to help you." What followed was a conversation that took hours. Sophia explained that she'd suspected Marcus's true nature within days of meeting him. There was something in his bearing, in the careful calculation of his actions, that suggested military or law enforcement training. She'd had him investigated not to threaten him, but to confirm her suspicions. "I've been waiting for someone like you," she said. "Someone who could help me destroy my father and survive the experience." She told him about Project Genesis. It wasn't what the CIA had suspected. It wasn't a bomb or a conventional weapon. Volkov had been financing a bioweapons laboratory in Moldova, staffed by disgruntled scientists from the former Soviet bioweapons program. They were developing a virus, a pathogen specifically designed to target populations with certain genetic markers. It was a weapon of unprecedented lethality, and Volkov was planning to sell it to the highest bidder. "The first batch is complete," Sophia explained. "My father is meeting with representatives from 3 different terrorist organizations on Friday. This will be the final handover before the virus is released into the wild." But there was something else. Volkov had become paranoid. He suspected a traitor in his organization. He'd been moving resources, consolidating power, and preparing contingency plans. He'd also been watching Sophia more closely, monitoring her movements, questioning her loyalty. "He knows something is wrong," Sophia said. "He doesn't know what yet, but he can feel it. My father has instincts like a predator, and if he determines that I'm a threat—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. Marcus immediately contacted Chen through an emergency protocol, a signal that meant Sophia's apartment would be raided within the hour by tactical teams. But before Marcus could execute the plan, Volkov moved first. The call came through Sophia's phone at 3 a.m. She answered, her face going pale as she listened to her father's voice. "I know what you've done," Volkov said, his voice devoid of emotion. "I know about the FBI agent. I know about your betrayal. You have 1 hour to bring Agent Deshawn to the compound at Fontainebleau, or I will begin killing the people you care about, 1 person per hour, until you comply." The line went dead. Marcus reached for the phone, but Sophia was already moving. "He knows. God, he knows everything." "It's a trap," Marcus said. "We need to get you to a safe house now." But Sophia grabbed his arm. "My friends, my university colleagues, the people from the shelter where I volunteer. He said he'd kill them one by one." "Sophia, listen to me," Marcus said, looking her in the eye. "We can protect—" "You can't protect everyone," she interrupted. "My father has resources. He has people everywhere. By the time you mobilize protection, he'll have already—" Her voice broke. "I have to go to him." Marcus made a decision in that moment that violated every protocol, every regulation, every instinct of his training. He called Chen directly, using a phone that should never have been used. He explained the situation, explained that they were walking into a trap, but that there was no other choice. "We have a 2-hour window," Chen said. "Can you get to Fontainebleau?" "Yes," Marcus replied. "But we'll be walking in blind. He'll have the compound fortified." "Not blind," Chen said. "I'm activating a tactical team. We'll have snipers in position, surveillance drones overhead. But Marcus, if this goes wrong, if you're compromised, we have orders to extract you and abandon the operation." "Understood," Marcus said, though the words felt like betrayal. The drive to Fontainebleau took 90 minutes. Sophia sat in the passenger seat, her hand gripping Marcus's thigh, not speaking. The forest was dark and silent, the kind of place where crimes went unwitnessed and bodies were never found. The compound emerged from the darkness like a fortress. High walls, armed guards, floodlights that turned night into day. Volkov was indeed paranoid. The security measures were extreme, the kind of setup that would take a conventional law enforcement team days to breach. They parked in front of the main gate. Before they could step out, Volkov's men surrounded the vehicle. Weapons were drawn. Marcus and Sophia were pulled from the car, their hands forced behind their backs. Sophia was separated from Marcus immediately. The last thing he saw before she was dragged away was the fear in her eyes, not for herself, but for him. Marcus was thrown into a concrete chamber deep in the compound's basement. No windows, no furniture, just bare walls and the sound of his own breathing. He tried the door, locked from the outside, reinforced. He examined the walls, searching for weak points, potential escape routes. There were none. Hours passed, or perhaps it was minutes that felt like hours. In the darkness, time became meaningless. Marcus knew that Chen was monitoring his location through the GPS transmitter in his shoe. He knew that tactical teams were positioning themselves around the compound. What he didn't know was whether they could move in time to save Sophia. The door finally opened. Volkov entered, flanked by guards. The Russian oligarch looked smaller in person than in the photographs, diminished by the weight of his own violence. "You seduced my daughter," Volkov said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute certainty. "You infiltrated my organization. You attempted to destroy everything I've built." "Yes," Marcus said simply. There was no point in denying it. "I have admired your work," Volkov continued. "It is elegant, professional. You infiltrated my operation with a skill I haven't seen in decades. Under different circumstances, I might have offered you employment." "You tried that already," Marcus replied. "It didn't work out." Volkov smiled, an expression devoid of warmth. "Sophia is upstairs. I'm debating whether to kill her or keep her as leverage. She betrayed me, which under normal circumstances would be an execution offense. But she is my daughter. Blood still matters, even in a world of betrayal." "Let her go," Marcus said. "Keep me. Do whatever you want to me, but let her go." "An interesting proposition," Volkov mused. "But I'm afraid neither of you is leaving here alive. My men are already executing the federal agents positioned around my compound. Your tactical teams are being neutralized as we speak. You've walked into a trap with no escape, Agent Deshawn." As if on cue, explosions erupted above them. The sound of gunfire echoed through the concrete walls. Volkov's expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened slightly. "It seems your people are making one last futile attempt at heroics," he said. "Very well. Let's go watch the finale together." The guards forced Marcus up a series of stairs. The compound was in chaos. Explosions, gunfire, shouting. The FBI's tactical team hadn't been neutralized. They'd been delayed, but Chen had managed to coordinate a simultaneous assault from multiple angles. Helicopters descended on the compound, their rotors cutting through the night air. Snipers eliminated guards on the roofline. Breaching charges blew open doors and walls. Marcus and Volkov emerged into a courtyard transformed into a war zone. Volkov's private army was being systematically destroyed. The Russian oligarch watched it all with the detachment of a man observing a chess match where he'd already conceded defeat. "Where is Sophia?" Marcus demanded. "In the East Tower," Volkov replied. "But you won't reach her in time. I've wired the building with explosives, enough to level the entire compound. It will detonate in—" He looked at his watch. 4 minutes. Marcus grabbed Volkov by the throat. "Disable it now." "I'm afraid I can't," Volkov said, surprisingly calm despite having a federal agent's hands crushing his windpipe. "The detonator is biometric. It responds only to my palm print and my voice code. And I'm afraid I've decided that if I can't have my empire, then no one will have anything." The moment stretched between them. Marcus with his hands around a murderer's neck, Volkov smiling at the darkness that was about to consume them both. Then a gunshot rang out. Special Agent Chen stood 20 feet away, her weapon trained on Volkov. The shot had struck him in the shoulder, causing him to stagger. But there wasn't time for another shot. The sound of a second gunshot came from the opposite direction, one of Volkov's men, attempting to kill Chen. In the chaos that followed, Marcus made his choice. He left Volkov and ran toward the East Tower. The building was burning, its upper floors consumed in flame. He could see the GPS coordinates of Sophia's location in his mind. He'd memorized the compound's layout during his briefing. He ran up 4 flights of stairs through smoke and heat. The building groaned around him, beams collapsing, fire spreading. His lungs burned, his eyes watered. But he pushed forward, driven by a force that transcended training, protocol, and survival instinct. Sophia was in a locked room on the 4th floor, sealed behind a reinforced door. Marcus threw his shoulder against it once, twice, a third time. On the 4th attempt, the lock gave way. She was huddled in the corner, her face streaked with tears and soot. When she saw Marcus, she ran to him. "The building is coming down," Marcus said. "We have to move now." They made it to the stairwell just as the floor behind them collapsed. The stairs were narrowing as the fire consumed the structure, the heat so intense that Marcus could feel his skin burning. Sophia stumbled, and Marcus caught her, pulling her into his arms and running blind through the inferno. They burst through the main entrance as the East Tower collapsed inward, imploding in a shower of sparks and ash. They fell to the ground, gasping for breath, their bodies battered and burned. Hands grabbed them, federal agents, trained paramedics, people pulling them away from the danger. Marcus held Sophia's hand as they were placed on stretchers, refusing to let her go even as the medics tried to separate them. Chen appeared above him, her face streaked with sweat and smoke. "You're both alive," she said, and there was something in her voice that suggested she genuinely believed they wouldn't be. "Volkov?" Marcus asked, his voice raspy from inhaling smoke. "Dead," Chen replied. "The building came down on top of him. There's not much left to identify, but we've confirmed it through dental records." The next 2 weeks were a blur of hospitals, interrogations, and psychological evaluations. Marcus suffered second-degree burns on 30% of his body. Sophia's injuries were less severe, but the psychological trauma was profound. The FBI quarantined them separately for security reasons, claiming that they needed to process their experiences independently. Marcus knew it was more than that. The Bureau couldn't have an agent and a witness in contact until the operational debrief was complete. But they managed to communicate through the hospital staff, through carefully worded messages passed between orderlies. Marcus wrote, "I love you. This isn't over. We're going to have a life together." Sophia's response came back, "My father destroyed so much. Don't let him destroy this too." The investigation into Project Genesis revealed the full scope of Volkov's operation. The bioweapons laboratory in Moldova was discovered and dismantled. The virus samples were destroyed. The terrorist networks that had been working with Volkov were disrupted. The financial infrastructure that had funded his operation was dismantled. In death, Volkov had finally been contained. Sophia provided complete cooperation with investigators. She revealed decades of criminal activity, terrorist connections, and government corruption. The information was so extensive that it led to the arrests of over 300 individuals across Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. Her testimony would be used in trials for years to come. But cooperation came with a price. 3 weeks after the fire at Fontainebleau, Marcus was called into an office at the FBI's Paris bureau. Sitting behind the desk was Director Patricia Harrison, who'd flown in from Washington specifically for this meeting. "Agent Deshawn," Harrison said carefully, "your actions during this operation were extraordinary. You infiltrated one of the world's most dangerous criminal organizations. You gathered intelligence that led to the dismantling of a bioweapons program that could have killed millions. You saved the life of a critical witness. By any measure, you've succeeded beyond our expectations." Marcus waited for the other shoe to drop. In his experience, compliments from bureau directors were usually followed by bad news. However, Harrison continued, your personal relationship with Sofia Volkov presents a significant problem. You violated departmental policy, compromised your cover, and allowed emotional attachment to influence operational decisions. According to regulations, this constitutes grounds for termination. I understand, Marcus said. Do you? Harrison asked. Because what I'm about to tell you suggests otherwise. Sofia Volkov is being offered immunity from prosecution. She's also being offered a new identity and relocation assistance. She can start over anywhere in the world. Marcus's heart rate accelerated. The question, Harrison continued, is whether you're willing to walk away from the Bureau to follow her, because that's the only way this ends well for both of you. If you remain with the FBI, you can never contact her again. If you stay with her, you'll have to resign. The director pulled a resignation letter across the desk. I need an answer within 48 hours. Marcus visited Sofia in the hospital that evening. She was sitting up in bed, her body wrapped in bandages, but her eyes were alert and alive. They're offering me a choice, Marcus said. Leave the Bureau or lose you forever. Sofia's expression was unreadable. What do you want to do? I want to be with you, Marcus said. But I need to know what you want. Do you want me to stay with the FBI? Do you want me to leave? Or do you want me to let you go, to give you a chance at a normal life without the baggage of what we've been through? Sofia was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached out and took his hand. I spent my entire life under my father's control, she said. And now I have a choice. I can run away and pretend our love never happened, or I can choose it. Choose you. Choose a life built on something real instead of something broken. You deserve better than me, Marcus said. I'm damaged. My career is over. I don't have answers or promises. I don't need promises, Sofia interrupted. I need you. Marcus signed the resignation letter the next morning. By noon, he was no longer an FBI agent. By evening, he'd been assigned a new identity and relocation assistance. He and Sofia would be leaving Paris, leaving Europe, leaving behind everything that had defined their lives until this moment. The destination was São Paulo, Brazil, a city where they could start over, where their history wouldn't precede them, where they could simply be two people trying to build something real. The flight took 11 hours. As the plane descended toward the Brazilian coast, Sofia held Marcus's hand and looked out the window at the sprawling city below. Do you think we can be happy? She asked. I think we can try, Marcus replied, and I think that's more than most people ever get. The apartment was modest, located in a neighborhood of intellectuals and artists. Through the windows you could see the mountainous landscape that surrounded São Paulo. Books lined the shelves, literature, history, philosophy. Photographs on the walls showed a woman teaching, a man consulting on security matters, moments of genuine joy. Marcus and Sofia had built a life. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't easy, but it was theirs. Sofia taught literature at a university, specializing in trauma and recovery narratives. She volunteered at a shelter for trafficking victims, using her own experience to help others heal. She was writing a book about her family, about power and corruption, and the possibility of redemption. Marcus had started a consulting firm specializing in international crime prevention. The work kept him engaged, kept him utilizing his skills, but it no longer consumed him. He had boundaries now. He had a life outside of work. He had Sofia. One evening, they sat on the balcony as the sun set over the city. Marcus pulled out a small box. I know we've been through enough drama for 10 lifetimes, he said. But I wanted to ask anyway. Sofia Volkov, or whatever name you're going by now, will you marry me? Sofia looked at the ring, then at Marcus, then at the sunset. She smiled. Yes, she said simply. They embraced as the day transitioned to night. Two people who'd met in darkness and violence, who'd fallen in love while hunting each other, who'd survived fire and betrayal and loss, and who'd finally, miraculously, found something worth building toward. And that was the story of an undercover agent who found love in the last place he expected, inside the enemy's heart. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more cinematic tales of love, danger, and redemption. Drop a comment below. Would you have chosen love or duty? Thanks for watching, and see you in the next story.